Article 13 is making people's heads spin. Is my YouTube content gonna get flagged? Is my channel gonna get shut down? Is YouTube gonna get shut down? Is my content not gonna be allowed in Europe? Well, I think what we all need on this is some clarity and simplicity. So to answer some of those questions, I have an ex-CNN producer, Jennifer Moore. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with reused content in the news industry, and then we can talk a little bit more about how you see it applying to YouTube.
Hey Jesse, thanks for having me. I worked in the traditional media and TV news industry for over 15 years, from local newsrooms to almost 5 years at CNN, and I have dealt with a lot of situations involving fair use and copyright issues. At CNN, we had over 1,000 affiliates, and I was responsible for much of the content that came from those affiliates, and believe me, a lot of it had what we call third-party material, which means anything that the content creator did not make themselves.
Okay, great, so you have a lot of background and experience. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the law exactly is? Like, explain it to us simply, like how it works.
The European Union Directive on Copyright in the Digital Single Market is recently passed legislation in Europe. And what it means is that it's trying to limit content that is shared on online platforms, copyrighted content. And it also makes these online platforms and aggregator sites liable for any unauthorized uses of copyrighted material. So right now, these platforms aren't responsible for what's being put out on them, like user-generated content, but these new laws are going to change all that, and member states now have 2 years to implement these new laws in their own countries.
Okay, so what is and isn't allowed under this law in terms of video reuse?
There still seems to be a lot up in the air on how this is actually going to be rolled out and enforced. Will users in the EU be barred from uploading content if it contains copyrighted material? Will these users be barred from using these platforms? We don't really know at this point, but I do think that this puts the onus on the companies like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, making them liable now for all of this copyrighted material that is on their platforms. Now, nonprofit sites like Wikipedia and GitHub are actually exempt, but Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales has tweeted out that he does not support Articles 11 and 13, as they're dubbed, which are now Articles 15 and 17. He feels like this is a threat to the free and open internet.
Talk to us about copyrighted images, music, things like that.
Article 13, now known as Article 17, does include video, images, and music.
So what about music creators, and if they're doing things with copyrighted music and cover songs and things like that, is that okay?
Yes, that means cover songs too. Now, there are some exemptions with this law, like if you are doing it for criticism, review, parody, that sort of thing. And interestingly, that does resemble Section 107 of the US Copyright Act, which is a very similar provision. But there's a lot of concern that content providers are going to have to resort to using upload filters, much like YouTube's current Content ID system. And the issue is, will this artificial intelligence system be able to tell the difference between unauthorized uses of copyrighted material and permitted uses? Will it be good enough, or are there going to be a lot of false positives? And we've already seen that playing out in YouTube.
Okay, what about written content? What's allowed as far as that goes?
Article 11, now known as Article 15, is being dubbed the link tax, where writers and publishers are entitled to money through licensing deals from platforms like Google if they share a portion of an article.
So the big question, how do you see this affecting the YouTube platform as a whole?
This really puts YouTube and the other big players between a rock and a hard place. It is so difficult and complicated to comply simultaneously with all of these international legal systems. And now the EU is forcing them to make drastic changes to their online policies. So what do? Do they do all these blanket changes for everyone, changing the terms of service, or do they block users in the EU? Which would actually be a very interesting thing to happen. Imagine if all of the tech giants just teamed up and were like, you know what, EU? Screw you, we're out, and then nobody in the EU has access to these platforms. Can you imagine what kind of fire that's going to light under people?
How do you think this is going to affect YouTube creators on an individual basis?
So many YouTube creators use unlicensed copyrighted material all the time. So say YouTube were to come up with some sort of system where they had to prove they got permission from someone, or they had to submit a form just detailing all of the third-party material that was in their videos. Now, if that process is cumbersome and kind of a pain in the butt to manage, a lot of these creators are not really going to want to deal with it, and they're going to play the safe route. But that means the content of YouTube, the landscape could start to look different. Imagine if no creator used third-party material in their videos anymore. We've already seen this to some degree with demonetization. I've seen a lot of YouTubers say stuff like, you know, I gotta watch what I say because I don't want my video to get demonetized. Imagine that happening with all of this copyrighted material. YouTube recently released a video admitting even their own team is fuzzy on a lot of these details on how these new laws are going to affect them.
What are your thoughts on how this will affect the type of content that comes out in the future? Is it gonna really shake things up as far as what we see on YouTube, what people are making, what is getting banned, and all that sort of things? What do you think as far as that goes?
Well, I think all this talk about how these laws are going to kill the internet are a bit overdramatic. The EU is making all of these demands of online platforms, but they're making the companies do all of the heavy lifting to comply and jump through all of these hoops. So companies like YouTube are going to want to limit their liability as much as possible, which means they're more likely to be overprotective just so they don't violate all of these laws. But what I'm really interested in is actually happening right here in the US. Currently, companies like YouTube are immune from liability under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. But this also stipulates that these platforms can't curate, choose the content. They have to act literally more as a utility and not police all of the content. But the EU laws do exactly the opposite, forcing all these content providers to do just that, to curate, to decide what's okay and what's not okay. And then they start to look a lot less like a utility and more like a publisher like the New York Times, which is not immune to liability from copyright laws. So I think that'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because I see this as a lose-lose situation for all these tech companies. Bigger companies with money will be in the best position to comply with these EU laws, and unfortunately, smaller businesses and individuals just won't be. What most people don't realize is that fair use isn't some sort of protection, it's a legal doctrine used in courts. If someone sues you for copyright infringement, it doesn't matter if you have an airtight case for fair use if you don't have money for lawyers. Look at the situation with the H3H3 lawsuit. Yes, they did win, but they admitted they spent tons of time and money fighting it. Corporations like TV networks have entire legal teams to examine third-party material and determine the risk of unauthorized use. So they're more likely to use content if they feel the chance of a copyright holder suing them is low, like someone who shot a cell phone video. Less likely for TMZ video or anything for Major League Baseball. And here's another aspect we need to consider. What about copyright holders who want people to use and expose their content, like companies who are hoping for some viral marketing? If creators on, say, YouTube are a bit wary about using any and all third-party material, they're probably going to be a lot less likely to do that Nike ad reaction video. I'm very interested to follow what's happening and see how this all plays out long term, but I am very concerned about the future of online content creation.
If you want to see more about my personal thoughts about how this is going to affect YouTube, check out this YouTube video. Also, go to Jen's channel. I did an interview there talking about the right way about making money from YouTube, how you can make a lot more money, 10 times or more. If this video helped you, click that like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon to catch the newest videos. Also, make sure you subscribe to Jen's channel if you want to learn more about the ins and outs of the news industry and how it applies to YouTube.